Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another live stream. Back to another live stream. Back
100 times?
to another live stream.
200 times?
Back.
500 times?
Probably.
Who is Jose Arteaga?
Jose Arteaga is a YouTube content creator with several channels focusing on different themes.
I can't do it. We'll do it live. We'll do it live! Thing sucks!
His main channels include travel vlogs and lifestyle content. On his travel channel, Jose Arteaga Travels.
You ain't got the answers, man. You ain't got the answers.
Additionally, he runs a cooking channel and engages in other personal projects that highlight his diverse interests and expertise. Projects and expertise. Projects and expertise. Project, 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 expertise,
We have some great friends in the media. Sean, and Laura, and Tucker, and Janine.
Oh, I wanna work in fake news, conspiracy TV, radio content, rich and big time family, private server, emails. What about the Clinton Foundation? Isn't this far more worthy of an investigation? It's time to shut it down, turn the tables and lock her up. You simply can't comprehend the genius of Donald Trump, the man is the president of the United States. He is to be respected. Carmel's a bitch, Hillary. Expect to be arrested. Fake news TV. Democrats want to replace you with immigrants. Their only hope, another Kevin is forming. The aliens are being coached. The media and the deep state is corrupt to the core. The America that we know and love doesn't exist anymore. The middle class is being displaced by an unending wave of illegals. Foreigners spit on our customs and mock our laws. And Congress racist if we try to make them leave. But Democrats have a solution. Smoke more weed. State run TV. Listening to Tupac and smoking a ton of weed. State run TV.
There is a hero in Washington. His name, Jim Comey. He's not only brilliant, politics plays no role in his decisions.
He's a liar and he's a leftist liberal.
Fox State run TV, peddling a set is free for fake news, propaganda, and conspiracy theories. Criminal cabal in our FBI. The FBI is the crime family. Collusion is not a crime. It's actually immoral not to vote for Donald Trump. We simply gonna have people that we know nothing living next door to us. Fox News been trying to scare you. Demonization begins. Immigrants been dead. It's us against them. Fake news TV. How precisely is diversity our strength? Fake news TV. Fake news all over the place. This is an invasion into this country.
There is no invasion. Tomorrow is 1 week before the midterm election.
I told you that you needed to be afraid because they are coming for you.
No one's coming to get you.
Putin got 20% of my uranium as a result of Hillary Clinton signing off.
She did not.
Our president's in fact sex crazed, killing machines. Fake news TV. Fake news TV. Fake news TV.
Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome back to another live stream. Talking about TV today, the television programming that most of us watch, don't watch, well, at least we're fully aware of. We're going to be talking about that today. Again, we're going to be talking about, well, why I don't own a TV, why I don't watch TV. I do watch YouTube. I'm on YouTube a lot. Obviously, I make YouTube videos and content and all that good stuff. But the reality is that, I mean, for me personally, I haven't really owned the TV in a very, very long time. I remember been, something that I have in my home. I haven't had a TV in my home in a long, long time. So, we're going to be talking about that. In fact, if you guys are in the chat right now, shout out to everyone out there watching. Let me know. Let me know if you guys own a TV or don't own a TV. In fact, let's do a quick poll. Might as well, right? To see if you guys own a TV or not. Whether you watch it or not, that's a different story. But do you own one? So do you own a TV? Let's ask that question and see what you guys have to say, about all that. 1 second. Hold on a second. Yeah. Okay, we're back. Anyway, so, all right, guys. So, yeah, what I like to do on this channel, what I like to do here is tell you a little bit about my life story, about my own, situation, and, to do a little bit of a story time, all that good stuff. And, we go from there. So, again, me personally, I haven't owned a TV in a very long time. In fact, I've been living in Mexico. This is why I have a big Mexican flag. For some of you guys out there that don't, know why I have a Mexican flag behind me. I am not Mexican. I just happen to live in Mexico. I'm an American, that lives out here. And, I've been here 7+ years, give or take, and I have yet to own a TV. I've never bought a TV. In fact, now that I got this new home with a little bit more space, we were thinking about, hey, let's buy a TV, let's get a couch, let's have a little, family room type of thing, and see if we can set that up, so when we have visitors, or maybe you and me, me and my wife, we can have a little bit of a movie night, sit out there and watch. But the reality is that it's like so low on my priority list that it's not something that I even envision in having. And even when I do have, it's only going to be for a few things. Again, it's a super duper luxury at this point. Again, have it there just in case, one day we want to watch a movie, maybe one day play some video games, whatever. That's about it. Oh, sorry about that. How's the audio? Is the audio better? Check 1 2 3. Checking. Let me know. Man, my apologies. Maybe I pushed the wrong button or something. I don't know. Audio good? Okay. All right. Good. Yeah. Sorry about that. Sometimes it's the technology isn't 100% perfect. Maybe Lambo tripped over a wire. Why are you always blaming me for everything? Why not? Anyways, so my whole journey of not having a TV has been a long journey. And again, I have not had a TV, literally since, man, I want to say 20 years now, maybe, give or take, because so just to give you a little context, I was born in 1981. So by the time that it was the year 2001, I was only 20 years old, 21, 22 years old. And again, at that point, most people had TVs, have TVs, whatever. It was the only way to really get any kind of information. You had to hook everything up to the TV. The only thing that you didn't hook up to a TV was if you had a computer. Remember the big old boxy computers, with a big monitor and the whole thing. So for, I've been, on the internet since I could remember. I was one of those kids that, one of the first things that I got, I think when I turned like 15, 16 years old, I didn't even want a car. I wanted a computer. All right. I was one of those nerdy kids. All right. And so, I had a computer since a very, very young age. And, back in the day, back in the Napster days, for some of you old farts out there like me, you guys know back in the day, the only way to really get any kind of, entertainment. It was just on TV and nothing else. You had no other choice but to watch TV. And then eventually, when we got the internet, at the very, very early stages of the internet, a lot of people, that had the vision, like me and some of my friends or some people out there, we knew that at some point and one day, we're going to be able to watch things on the internet. We're going to be able to watch things from the computer. And again, this is still super early days. Again, we're still like in the Napster days and the dial-up days, where again you would sign on to the internet with a dial-up. All right, let me see if I can hold on. Let me see if I can get the dial-up here. That's how old I am. This is how old I am. Here, let me see. Hold on, let me see. Can I get it? Here, check this out. Remember that? So I'm that old, okay? And I remember back in the super duper crazy early days of the internet, and we were just, again, basically logging into the internet with something like this, and then we would connect to something like Napster, and we would download one song. Sometimes that one song, took like how many days, how many hours just to download something that was a few kilobytes or megabytes or what have you. Now, as technology got better in the late 90s and stuff like that, I was one of the first ones to get like a DSL, cable internet into my home, because I begged my dad for it and stuff like that. So we got that. And, once I got that, I was able to download a lot of songs very quickly, because up until that point, the only friends or the only people that had access, to downloading things quickly were my friends that were already in the university or college or whatever. And so they had like these things called T1 lines, or T1, T2. I don't know if you remember those. And that was like the fastest, that's like comparable to, what we're used to now. Obviously still very slow compared to what we have now. But with that said, very early on, I was downloading music and I was making CDs and I was downloading albums and I was doing all that. And then I was like, what else is out there? What else is on the internet that I could download, that I could find? And I was like, what? Back in the day, before, we were downloading anything in the late 90s, I was one of those kids I was one of those people out there that was always like recording stuff from TV to watch later. Because like in my case, my dad was like one of those, my dad and my family, my cousins, they were some of the first, okay. My cousins, when they came from Cuba, they were photographers. So they were, doing wedding photography, professional photography. They were in the photography world. And then eventually when the camcorders came along, my dad was one of the first ones to get a camcorder. And then eventually he was one of those first guys out there to do a wedding video, to do a kid's birthday party video, all those kinds of things. So I was always around that. Obviously by the late 90s, it was already like a thing. And a lot of people were, hiring somebody to come film their, wedding or whatever. Right. So, I was already like well entrenched in that world. And so my dad had, all kinds of VHS tapes, VCRs, TVs, again, super old school, 90s technology. So what I would do is that like, this is what I did at the beginning, but eventually I bought my own. But, I had like, my dad had like an old VCR, a bunch of old tapes, and I would watch shows on TV like In Living Color or Saturday Night Live or Mad TV or whatever was on, right? And I would go on ahead and I would record those. All right. With commercials, with everything. And then later on, when I was hanging out with my friends or whatever, we would put in those tapes and we were watching Living Color. We would watch, Beavis and Butthead. We would watch whatever it was, whatever the hell they recorded, right? Wrestling, WWF wrestling, whatever, right? And so that was the very, very beginnings of all that. And, I was one of the few. If in fact, I was probably the only one of my friends or anyone that did anything like that. So once the internet came about and we were downloading music and we had a little bit better technology and all that stuff, like I said, I already got the cable DSL, yada, yada, yada. I was like, well, what else is out there? What else can I find? So I was like, all right, well, I have all these episodes of The Simpsons or all these episodes of Seinfeld, but I don't have all of the episodes. So I would go online And that would, back in the day, you know what I mean? They had a lot of the infrastructure that we have today, so I would just go online and like, go to one of these websites like IMDb or whatever, Reddit or whatever they had back then, I don't even think they even had Reddit. And I would just find, okay, I would look for, okay, what are all the episodes of season 2 of Seinfeld? Okay. And I'll be like, okay, I got this episode, that episode, this episode, but I'm missing these 5 episodes. So I was like, what can I do? And I would type in, instead of typing in, Metallica song or typing in Semisonic, whatever music, or, AC/DC, I said, you know what? I wonder if there's any videos out there. So I would type in Seinfeld episode 2, blah, blah, blah. And then boom, all of a sudden there was a lot of people that had that. And I was like, that's interesting. So then I started downloading them. And then all of a sudden, again, back when you're a young kid, late teens, early 20s, whatever, you got a lot more energy and a lot more desire to do things. And especially when nobody was doing it. So what did I do? Well, then I just started downloading full seasons of shows and TV and then movies and all this other stuff. And then I realized, I'm not the only one out there. I have the ability, to just record, stuff on VHS and then watch it later, but I didn't have the technology or the money, all right, to basically get those VHS tapes and put them and make them a video file and then upload to the internet and then share that. But other people did. And so then I would get those video files and then I would download them and then I would have my own collection, all right, of all kinds of, I had movies and TV shows and all kinds of things. It was super cool. In fact, I probably have some of those old files on some old hard drive somewhere, but anywho's, the point is that that's when I first, that's when I really, really first started doing that. Now, eventually, again, I grew up very poor. So eventually I left the house, you know what I mean? And I moved out with my first girlfriend. And, well, you know what? Before I got to that point, all we had access to was cable TV. And again, whatever you wanted to watch, let's say you wanted to watch Beavis and Butthead. Okay, it was Beavis and Butthead at 9 o'clock on a Wednesday night. And it was whatever episode they had. But sometimes we take it for granted how we have like Netflix and we have all this stuff available these days. But, back then we didn't. But I did. I was able to watch whatever I wanted for the most part at any time. So I at that point, I was watching very little TV. The only time I would watch TV, again, this is like my early 20s, late teens, 18, 19, 20, 21. The only thing I would watch TV for would be to watch the news, the local news or the news, because there was nothing like that on the internet. And then sports. That's it. Baseball game, football game, whatever, right? So eventually, I left the house. I moved in with my first girlfriend, and you know how it is when you're very young, dumb, and stupid, and you're living, in a little room. You know what I'm saying? Like that whole scenario, right? You move out for the first time. And so obviously, sure, we had a TV. Everybody had a TV. But the one thing we didn't have was cable. That costs money. And it was expensive. It's always been expensive, right? So, when you're really, really young, dumb, poor, and that whole thing, you're cutting cost wherever possible. And at that point, I was working multiple jobs. We were young and dumb. And, again, if we're not working, you want to go out and have some drinks, go have some fun with some friends, whatever it is, right? So there was no need for me to really have a TV. And then whenever, let's say I was at home at, with my girlfriend at the time or whatever, or just by myself or with some friends, well, what we would do is that we would just, get on the computer, and on the computer, I had all these video files. All right. Or at that point, again, by that point, there was more files, more everything out there. So we would just watch things from the computer. Eventually, I got rid of the big clunky computer. We got laptops, and then, we would watch on the laptops. And then, as technology improved and things got better, well, then guess what? Then all of a sudden there was really no need for cable, because I don't know if you guys remember back in the day, a lot of people could just go to Blockbuster Video and you would just rent the movie, rent the whatever, and that's it. You would just watch that. So a lot of times, what people would have is that they would just have a TV, maybe have an antenna to get a few channels, and then they would have like a PlayStation, and then they would get DVDs, right, of shows, movies, whatever, rent them, Or again, back in the early Netflix days, you remember they would send you the DVDs to the house. All right. Or you go to Redbox. All right. You got a Redbox and then rent them from that thing. And that's it. You know, that's how we would consume content, you know, whether it was a movie or TV show or whatever it was. And then, you know, back in the day, let's say that we wanted to watch, I don't know, Lost, or we wanted to watch Grey's Anatomy, we wanted to watch whatever it was. Well, then a lot of those shows, they would be on free TV. You didn't have to have cable for that, right? So that's basically what, at the very beginning, again, 25 years ago, I was already, you know, almost living without a TV. I had a TV, but I didn't really use the TV. And as I got deeper into technology, well, I used it less and less and less. And when I had even less time to dedicate to sit there to watch anything, why would I even have a TV? If I only had a little bit of time to watch something, you know, I'm working in a kitchen. Again, remember, I used to be a cook, right? Working in a kitchen, all right, for 2 shifts, okay, because I had 2 jobs, all right? And I finally got home and I only got a few hours, you know, to take a shower, get something to eat, smoke something, watch a little something, pass out, and start over again. Again, I wasn't going to spend like $100 or whatever it was to get cable just to, you know, watch some crap on TV. You know, I would just, you know, watch whatever was online. And then eventually, as the years went on, again, and this is how old we are, all of us out there in the audience, but as the years went on, eventually YouTube came about. But again, YouTube in the early days was crap. You know, nobody was really watching it per se. But at that time, you know, again, things started to really change with technology. At that point, Blockbuster already died. There was no more video rental places. Most people were just getting their rentals, you know, from the Redbox or from Netflix. Okay, they were still shipping out the DVDs, but eventually, you know, it almost felt like it happened overnight. They started the streaming, and so when they started the streaming thing, you know, again, since I was so early on with the technology, I was like, well, wait a minute. I mean, you know, we already have this technology. There has to be some websites. There has to be something out there where you can watch all this stuff for free. And sure enough, 20 years ago, they already had that available. So again, being poor, you know, it's like I don't have the money, you know, to spend on a luxury like cable. So, you know, and I could just stream a movie or a TV show from online, or I could just download the show. Many times I still had to download the show and then just watch it, you know, from my computer. Well, that was the better option, because like, let's say that I wanted to watch a special show. Great. You know, before I left for work, I would go on ahead and, you know, start downloading the movie. And by the time I got home from work at 16 hours later, you know, the show was already downloaded or almost done. I know now these days it only takes a couple hours or a few minutes, but this is still way back in the day. So for years and years, you know, that's how I would consume, you know, content. And as the years went on, I had less and less time to dedicate to watching TV. All right. And so obviously, why would I even purchase a TV? Obviously, you know, I got another girlfriend, moved to another home, you know, all these adventures, all these different things happen. And it's like, you know, why am I going to get a TV? Why would I want to buy a TV? You know, there's no reason for me to buy a TV. And so I was always with computers. So I was always just, you know, I just upgraded my monitor, upgraded my computer setup, and I could just watch it there, you know, just do it that way. Now, eventually, as the years went on, the year 2013 came along, and then 2013, that's when I left Miami. All right, that's when I finally left Miami. And you know, at that point, you know, before I left Miami, I was, you know, I had a TV available because, you know, again, it was really, really low. You know, lost everything because of the 2007-8, you know, crash. And, you know, I was living at the house where I grew up in with my mom. Again, I know, terrible, right? And so she had a TV, and so, you know, obviously she had the TV on, and so I would from time to time I would watch the TV, you know, some news, some whatever, but most of the time it was always on the Spanish channels, you know, my mom watching whatever the hell she was watching. So again, even though we had TVs around, not something I was really, really consuming. Now, eventually 2013 came along, I moved to Seattle, things started to get better for me, and eventually I started making money. So a few years down the line, probably 2014, 2015, you know, give or take, let's say 2014 or so. I was like, all right, we're doing great, you know, and I was buying stuff left and right, you know, whatever, you know, my financial situation got really good really quickly. And so I was like, all right, we got to furnish this apartment. So, I bought a couch. I bought a big screen TV, the biggest screen TV I could buy at the time. And the real reason, the actual reason why I bought that TV was because, well, now I can afford it. So let me buy a TV. And the real mentality behind it was so I can watch sports, on the TV. So I could watch my Dolphins game, even though I was in Seattle, I could watch it there, just get the Red Zone channel or get the NFL package or whatever it was and just watch it on there. And, obviously I had the TV, football was not on 24 hours a day. And so, I had the TV and obviously I could afford cable. So I got cable and I started watching TV again for a little bit. It only lasted, I don't even know how long, maybe a few weeks or a month, until I realized, oh my God, this is all slop. There was nothing on TV. Like the running joke. Well, there was a running joke back from the Beavis and Butthead days where they had like 500 channels and there was nothing on any of the channels. This is back before we even thought there was going to be that many channels, right? And now with the technology, there's like a bazillion channels, right? This is a channel you're watching this on, okay? So anyways, so with that said, I got cable TV, I was watching the local news, watching regular news, things like that. And I was like, ugh, this is all terrible. There's nothing on TV, nothing on whatever. But back then, it was still that point in history where cable TV or TV was still viable and people were not on YouTube. People were still not on the internet like they are today. And so, at that point, I started to watch more YouTube because at that point, I think they had like a Roku or some technology. I don't know if it was a Roku or something else. I forgot how I first was able to link YouTube to the television. And so then at that point, I was like, well, wait a minute, what else can we link to the television? And then that's it. The rest is history. As time went on, I was able to find out, I can, find the football game that I want to watch, the stream, and then just put it on the TV. I don't have to pay for the NFL package. All these movies that I want to watch, it's on these channels. All these TV shows I want to watch, it's all on these channels. And so then I just started, just putting everything on the TV. And even though I was paying for cable, I never watched it. Now, from time to time, there were things, that I would watch on TV. And that was, again, because it was still in those days of cable, still like at that peak, TV and cable at the peak, and the internet was still down here. So it was before it switched over. And I think some of you guys remember that, like Vice. So Vice, had, they were like a newsletter or some magazine or something like that. And then Vice, back in the day, they started doing documentaries and they started really, making content for YouTube that was nothing like what anyone had seen before. So remember, I was always around videography, filming, all that stuff my whole life. And so back in the day, like 20 years ago, me and my cousins, we would sit there, doing our drugs, talking crap, right? And talking shit. I forgot, I can say whatever I want here. Anyways, and we would, we would just be there, doing our thing and dreaming of, hey, what could be done? We're so restricted with cable and television and Hollywood. Again, that you needed to have, not needed. There was all these barriers to entry to do anything in this world. This is, by the way, this is why when I was like 18 years old, 19 years old, I graduated high school, that I went into the kitchen and I didn't go into movies because back then, the barrier to entry was so astronomically difficult. I was like, yeah, that's not like a real dream. It's not like a real aspiration. Hey, I'm going to make videos or make content or be in Hollywood or whatever it was, even though that's kind of something that I wanted to do, make stuff, videos, whatever, be in this world, right? So I said, well, what's the second best option? So I went to the kitchen, all right? But as the years went on, and like I said, I was already in Seattle and, YouTube was starting to really blow up and cable was starting to fall. And I had all these ideas of things that, I've talked about throughout the years with my cousins and other people. And all of a sudden, like, I'm starting to see it in front of my face. When I first saw Vice on YouTube, I was like blown away. I remember I immediately called my cousin back in Miami. Hey, you got to watch this. Look, the thing that we were always talking about. Look, someone made the thing. Oh my God. Blah, blah, blah. Anyways, and you guys know the early days of Vice. Vice was awesome. It was amazing. In fact, it was so good back in the day that they, again, they didn't believe, most people did not believe in the power of YouTube and the internet still. So they thought that, hey, what we need to do now is make our own channel. So I would remember back in the day, they would advertise Vice on YouTube, you know, but saying like, hey, if you love the content that you're watching on YouTube, you should buy the channel. You know, go, talk to your local cable provider and see if you can get Vice. All right. And this is like the super duper early days, and, you know, Vice, you know, still and all that stuff. And so I remember that was one of the things that I would watch a lot of on cable was the Vice channel. All right. Eventually, the Vice channel, just like all other cable channels, became unwatchable. I used to be one of those guys that used to watch the Discovery Channel, the History Channel, all that stuff. But again, you know, back in, you know, again, like 15 years ago already, you know, you would go to the History Channel and there was no history. You know, it was all, you know, the pawn shop guys or those two gay guys that would always, you know, go to those the pickers. Remember those pickers guys? Same with Discovery. You know, Discovery was like ancient aliens and a bunch of crap, you know, and things like that. And so I was like, man, this is all terrible. So, you know, I would at that point, you know, even though I was trying to consume television, it was unwatchable. And so at that point, I was this is 10 years ago now. So this will be 2015. I was in my very early stages of making videos. Even before that, I was already watching YouTube. I was already in that world. I was already captured, you know, by the YouTube, you know, algorithm, by that world. And I started to see not just Vice, but there were other channels that were doing similar things. On top of that, you know, there was this one guy named Casey Neistat. Some of you guys know him, some of you guys don't know him, but he was a guy that basically took YouTube to the next level. He was the first guy to basically grab the camera, how I grab it, okay, on my other channel, and just do vlogs, you know, basically film his day. And he would make a little mini movie every day and upload every day. And seeing him, seeing another guy named Gary Vee, seeing other people, seeing Vice, seeing other channels, seeing all this other stuff, that's what really got my juices, you know, flowing again. And then at that time, and that's when I met my friend. Well, I mean, I already knew my friend Abe, you know, but that's when I, you know, my friend Abe asked me one day, hey, can you help me, you know, film some stuff for my dissertation in college? I don't know what it was, whatever, something he had to do. And so I was like, yeah, of course. I grabbed the camera, I started helping him out, and before I knew it, I fell in love with that again. And now, for the first time, I was like, oh, wait a minute. Not only, you know, can I film, because, you know, cameras and all that stuff, you know, was more accessible to me, but I already knew and I already saw the transition that was happening. I was like, well, wait a minute. Look at all these, again, look at Vice, look at Casey Neistat, look at Gary, look at all these people on the YouTube, you know, PewDiePie, whatever, right? Look at all these people that basically are doing what they want to do, you know, make videos, make content, do these things, and they have nothing to do with Hollywood. They have nothing to do with mainstream media. They have nothing to do with any of that stuff. And then that's what really got me going. I was like, okay, let's start making videos. Let's start making content. Let's start going down this path. And 10 years later, here I am doing this stuff. Now, during that whole time, I was not consuming TV, you know, because at that time I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. Let's see what's out there on YouTube. And that's when I started going deep diving into YouTube and really deep diving. And so obviously, you know, I would see a lot of videos, you know, basically, you know, like the ones that I was just telling you right now. But then, you know, as I started, you know, basically researching other things, you know, just random other things, right? You know, why is this like this? You know, what is money? What is this? What is that? Then I started to get a bunch of other YouTubers, a bunch of other content creators, you know, all kinds of people, young people, old people. You know, I bumped into this guy named Peter Schiff. Maybe you know him, maybe you don't. And I started learning about gold and silver. And I started learning about, you know, again, back in the early days of YouTube, they used to put out all these documentaries. You know, people used to upload anything and everything. And, you know, you got to learn about the Rothschilds. And you got to learn about, you know, the Khazarians. And you got to learn about the Anunnaki. And you got to learn about all this stuff. And I was like, oh, this is a bazillion times way more interesting than whatever the hell was on TV. There was nothing on TV that was interesting at all. You know what I mean? So I was one of those early guys on the YouTube, watching all these videos and then educating myself, educating. And I was like, oh, I see. And that's basically what got me, to really just stick to YouTube. Now, obviously, as the years went on and I started, and I continued making videos and content for YouTube, and I started to see that all of a sudden, people were watching less TV, watching less cable. If anything, they were just subscribing to Netflix, and things like that, YouTube, whatever, right? And again, back in the early days, you could still watch a movie, you can still watch TV shows on YouTube because that's before the whole copyright apocalypse happened. And, long story short, I started going really deep down the rabbit hole, and that's really, what got me to open up my mind as to what's really, really going on out there. So the more I educated myself, by watching all these videos and watching all these people and learning from all these individuals out there, and then I would watch TV or watch the news or watch what, and I'm like, man, what the hell? It was the disconnect was so huge. Like, for example, Peter Schiff, a guy that's always talking about gold and silver and talking about the truth, about this, about that. And I would see him also like on Fox News or on MSNBC. And he would try to say the same things that he was saying on the YouTube channel, but he would get censored, or he would, get, told to shut up, or, they would, put in a commercial break or whatever it was. And that's when I really started to question, and I started to really see what was going on out there. And then obviously, I never looked back. Why would I ever watch propaganda TV? At that point, I had already learned what TV programming was, what, again, the conspiracies that are all have come true at this point, right? And so, yeah, there was no way I could ever go back to that. And so, obviously, as the years went on, and, at some point, you remember, you guys know my story if you follow my other channel, I lost everything again. But again, even when I had a lot of money and I had my TV and I had my everything, I was not watching TV. So obviously, things happened in my life. I lost everything again. And that's, we still got to entertain ourselves. And so the only thing that was free, that I had really access to, that I could watch on my laptop, or watch on my phone, was YouTube. Okay, sure. There was, all those pages out there, where you can find the TV shows, stream TV shows or movies for free. But again, my mind wasn't on entertainment. I was on survival. And then that's where, I would keep watching YouTube, because on YouTube, you would get all kinds of videos of all, sometimes you want a little entertainment. Sometimes you want to learn something. Sometimes you're trying to, whatever, expand your mind, whatever it is. Okay. And so then as time went on, that's when I, obviously I got more and more embedded, and, again, my relationship, okay, with YouTube got stronger and stronger, to the point where, again, obviously, I never bought a TV. This is 10 years ago. 3 years passed before I ended up here in Mexico. And then here in Mexico, I never had a TV, because everywhere I rented, they didn't have a TV. And what was I going to watch? You know what I mean? Like some Mexican local TV. I mean, I wasn't going to pay for cable or anything like that. I knew it was out here, because I remember when I first moved to Mexico, one of the things that was, again, as I was trying to get used to things out here, I remember I went to a friend's house, and that friend had a TV. I was watching the TV, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. This is I think they had DirecTV or whatever it was. But anyways, it was exactly the same as the USA, only everything was in Spanish. And I was like, wow, this is interesting. But long story short, it was the same old slop. So why would I get a TV? Now, obviously, as the years went on, I would just keep doubling down on the things that I've done since I've always been poor, which is just watch content on my computer or my phone, usually on the computer. And that's it. And so, now now at this point in my life, I make videos, I make content. So sure, I watch videos, I watch content, but for the most part, I get to pick and choose what I want to watch. I get to curate, what I want to consume, as opposed to when you have a TV on, it's, you're watching whatever the hell is on. And another thing that I realized, as the years went on, especially living out here, is that in the USA, a lot of times what we do is that we'll have a TV and we'll just have it on in another room. And it's just always making noise, always making, there's always that stuff, that noise is coming out from there. And so, give me 1 second, guys. I gotta take care of something real quick. I just realized. Yeah, I'm gonna play this song real quick, and I'll be back in like 30 seconds. All right, sorry about that. Sorry about the interruption. Sorry. I'll be right back. 2 seconds.
If we can figure out how to establish a high bandwidth neural interface, then you're no longer a house cat.
I'm back. Sorry about that. All right, so at least for me, nowadays, when it comes down to just, consuming content, well, almost everything I consume is on YouTube. 99% of everything I consume is on YouTube. And it's simply why? Well, because I make stuff now. I make videos, I make content, and this is my world. And, I have no desire to watch, a movie, a scripted TV show, to watch the news, the propaganda. I have no desire at all to watch any of these things at all these days. And I don't, you know what I mean? And so, like, a lot of times, like, for example, look, one of the things that I love a lot, I love sports. I don't talk about sports here because I know most of you guys don't care. But I love sports. I'm a sports guy. I'm a guy. What can I say? So I love sports, right? And so one of the things, I'm not going to lie, one of the things that I missed, from having cable. Oh, you know what? In fact, when I had cable in Seattle, basically the only thing I would watch, okay, was either Vice News, the Vice channel, or ESPN. So a lot of times, again, anyone out there that loves sports, I don't know how it is these days. I hear a lot of complaints ESPN is terrible these days, but back in the day, you could just put on ESPN and it would just show highlights all day long. You know what I mean? It was just the baseball show, the football show, the basketball show, the sports show, whatever. And it was just, all day, every day. And then it would just repeat and repeat and repeat. So a lot of times, you could just have that in the background, So one of the things that I'll be honest, one of the things that I did miss and I have missed has been ESPN. But again, especially in the last like 7 years, again, there's been a ginormous boom when it comes to YouTube and the internet. But one thing that's changed dramatically in the last like 7 years, 5 years, give or take, has been the quality of the content, the quality of the videos, the quality of the stuff that's on the YouTube. So for example, I watch football every week. And so every week when you watch football, again, one of the things I used to watch ESPN for was to just see a, a synopsis, what's the word I'm looking for? A review, of all the games. So basically, it was just Chris Berman and the other dude, and they would just sit there and they would dissect every game. Okay, the Dolphins and the Jets. Okay, this is what happened. These are the plays. And they would talk about the game. Then the next game. Then the next game. Then okay. So that's one of the things that I miss. But nowadays, I don't miss it at all. Nowadays, I don't go to ESPN for anything. You know what I mean? Just to watch. I said not to watch, just to like look at sports scores or sports schedules. That's about it. Because now these days, there's a bunch of YouTubers out there that basically do what ESPN used to do. So now on Mondays, Tuesdays, whatever, when the football week is over, there's a bunch of YouTubers out there that do that. They'll show the highlights of all the games. They'll talk about the games. They'll break it down. Some are more comedic, somewhere, funny, comedy, entertainment. Others are more, X's and O's, that they're really serious about the game and what they do here and what they did to this and what they did to that. And so now I get to watch, I get to see a breakdown of all the games, and I get to see a breakdown by multiple channels, by multiple people about the games. And that's just sports. I mean, there's so many things, as there's so many other things as well. So back in the day when I used to buy DVDs, I used to be one of the nerds that used to buy the DVD with all the special commentary and the special this and the special clips but now all that is on YouTube. All that is on YouTube. And then I could go on and on. And so that's the thing. And so like as time has gone on, even the news, sure, some of you guys might consume the news, regularly, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, whatever it is, a local news. And you either, watch it on TV or you even watch it online. Every once in a while, when the Charlie Kirk thing happened, I looked up a few, news, a few news things so I could just kind of see what the propaganda was saying. And then I would see, a bunch of YouTubers that they were, dissecting the thing from all angles, and so on and so forth. So look, these days, it's like there's less and less of a need to watch TV for me to even own a TV because, at this point, if I were to have a TV, I got to have an extra TV. It's distracting me, while I'm working, while I'm trying to do other stuff. You follow me? So why would I want a TV? Why would I need a TV? And it's not just me. Many of you guys out there are also in the same boat. In fact, the younger you are, the less likely you're going to have a TV. You probably have a TV just to play your video games or something, And so I'm telling you, things have changed a lot and things are changing dramatically. Again, as you guys can see each and every day, less and less people are consuming TV. Less and less people have cable TV or cable TV subscriptions. And that's been replaced by a Netflix subscription, a Paramount TV subscription, a Disney Plus subscription, a subscription to Lambo TV, a subscription to this, and now when you add all that up, it's, more expensive than your cable bill these days. So, that's just the reality of it. You know what I mean? So more and more people these days are, doing a lot of the things that I've been doing for decades now, which is get away from cable TV, not pay cable TV, not pay for Netflix, not pay for any of these streaming services, and then figure out a way in order to consume content. Whether you want to go to a shady website and stream, the new South Park episode, or you want to go to another weird streaming site to watch the football game, or, you want to go on ahead and purchase, the game, purchase the movie, purchase the this or whatever. And so a lot of people have more freedom, to choose, and they don't have to just watch something that is curated for them, like TV. Again, right now with, Stephen Colbert, who else? Jimmy Kimmel, all these people getting, fired. Say whatever the hell you want to say out there. The reality is that they're just getting rid of these people because there's no more use for these people. Nobody's watching that crap anymore. Nobody was watching that crap a long time ago, let alone these days. All right. You guys saw it during COVID, how nobody really watched that stuff. All right. And so the thing is that we're now in this big inflection point where we're seeing a giant changing of the guard, and the people in power, they all assumed that, you would just go from TV, cable, and just go to the streaming platforms and pay them that way and consume what they, and then remember, a lot of people complain about Netflix and Amazon TV and all these things, whatever, Apple TV, whatever it is, because it's woke, too woke. And so for some people, that's great. Some people, it's not great. So again, people are now finding that there are other avenues out there. Some people just stick to YouTube. Others are on Rumble or on what else is out there? I forgot all these other websites that are out there. And they consume those videos. The videos that got banned, from YouTube a while ago, they're on other platforms. The people like let's say Alex Jones or others, out there that have gotten taken down, from the internet. They're in other platforms are still on the internet. The whole idea of censorship is not a real thing. It used to be a real thing. I think that there was a lot more censorship back in the day, 20 years ago, than there is today. Because, think about it. Think about where we are today. Again, just 10 years ago, 15 years ago, all right? You even said the word conspiracy and they're already, man, this guy must be crazy. But these days, it's like everyone's fully aware of just about everything that's going on. Now, whether or not people want to deal with reality or not, or whether or not people are going to do something about it or not, that's a different story for another day. But the point is that at this point, everybody's well versed on just about everything that's going on. And it's because of the internet. It's because people have abandoned the old propaganda machine for the most part. And more people are, again, searching, for the content that they want, and they're, tailoring, they're what's the word I'm looking for? They're the ones that are curating their own algorithm, okay, with what they want. So, for example, let's say you're very right-wing, well, then you're going to be watching a lot of right-wing stuff. Let's say you're very left-wing, you're going to be following a lot of left-wing stuff. Let's say you're right in the middle, you're probably going to be watching, dinosaur videos. I don't know, whatever. But the point is that there's something for everyone out there these days. And so more and more people are just finding out whatever their niche is, and they're just going down those rabbit holes. So, for example, let's say that your interest is dinosaurs. Well, you're going to be consuming video after video after video after video and content just on that. Let's say you want to watch Ancient Aliens. Hey, tons of information on that. Let's say that, you believe the official narrative of what happened to Charlie Kirk. Great. There's a bunch of stuff on that. And let's say you don't believe the official narrative, on Charlie Kirk aren't anything. There's a bunch of channels on that, and everything and anything in between. Look at me, look at my channel, this channel, the other channel. Let's say you want to move to Mexico, you can find info on that. Let's say you want to move to the Philippines, you can find info on that. Let's say you want to live on a sailboat in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. There are channels that do that. I mean, I could go on and on. And so now, these days, I remember back in the day, let's say you wanted to watch some cooking content, you would have to get on PBS. And then hope and pray to God that, Julia Child or whoever the hell was cooking, was going to cook something you wanted to see. There was no looking up recipes or anything like that. Eventually we got the cooking channel, right? The cooking network, right? The Food Network. But still, it was, sure, it got a little better, but still, it wasn't the same. As opposed to today, I can literally just type in brownie recipe, and I'm going to get 1,000 brownie recipes. And I'm going to get the simplest brownie recipe. I'm also going to get the fanciest brownie recipe. I'm also going to get a guy like me that's probably going to be entertaining you, like Emerald Live. Hey, it's an entertainment show. We're also happen to be making brownies today, and so on and so on. And other channels that are scientific, and they're going to break down, every molecule of the brownie, and I could go on. And so for me, and for you guys, for all of us, those are the things that are interested. So, for example, my sister might look up a brownie recipe, and she's probably going to look at, some middle-aged woman, that's in her nice fancy kitchen, and she's making, Martha Stewart type brownies. Now, for me, former cook, former baker, whatever, all this shit, baking all the time, right? Anyways, I already know how to make brownies, but what am I looking for? It's like, well, I want to make the fudgiest brownies available. Or I want to make, the whatever, the chocolatiest brownies. Or I want to make brownies with wheat in them. Or I want to understand the baking process, from a molecular standpoint, a scientific standpoint of the brownie. There's all this stuff. Again, for me as a cook, there's certain things that are very nerdy that I like that you might not enjoy. But I hash browns, that's right. A lot of hash. Anyways. But you know what I mean? Shit, you can find channels now that'll show you how to make hash browns or smoke hash browns, or just regular hash. But you know what I mean, right? And so that's what I'm trying to get at. And so, like, these days, what's really coming into play is that, everyone is an individual out there, and everyone has niche, things that they want or like. So, like I said, all of us right now could love brownies. But when we're looking up a brownie recipe, we're all going to look up a different brownie recipe. You follow me? And so it's the same thing. You know what I mean? Like for a million things. All right. And we're still at the beginning of that. I feel like we're still in the birth. We're still in the early stages of all that. Okay. I've understood this a long time ago, because that's why when I first started doing YouTube 10 years ago, I don't have like a special name. I don't have like a special channel name. You know, for example, like some people used to be like, oh, Jose, the crypto YouTuber, or Jose, the Mexican YouTuber, or Jose, the conspiracy guy. But the reality is that I am Jose Arteaga. I didn't want to put myself, I didn't want to give myself a name, you know, like a wrestler name or a porn star name, or I didn't want to have my channel have a special name, because that would get me lost in the sauce. Because I knew way back then I was going to be making videos. And what I really wanted to do is do this for as long as humanly possible. And I knew as an artist, again, you have to rediscover yourself or reinvent yourself constantly. And so for me, it's like I didn't want to tie myself down to one thing. I just wanted to be me. So that's why from day one, my first channel, Jose Arteaga. This channel, Jose Arteaga. Unleashed. You know, Jose Arteaga living in Mexico. Jose Arteaga goes to the moon. Whatever. Why? Because I am the channel. I am the content. What you guys consume is me per se. All right. And how I bring you that information or that entertainment or that whatever. I've understood this a long time ago. Why? Because I consume this stuff too, you know? And so it's that's the thing, you know, at the end of the day, that's why I don't take myself too seriously. That's why I got like a fake horse here. You know, it's all to add to that ambience. I'm not so fake. I'll show you fake motherfucker. Right. Anyways, but you know what I'm saying? Like it's at the end of the day, we're entering into a brand new paradigm, a brand new world, a brand new everything. We've already seen censorship really doesn't work. They're trying to delete the internet. That's not working either. You know, they're trying to force people into, okay, basically they're forcing people out of cable. You know, not forcing them out. You know, cable's killing itself, TV's killing itself, movies is killing itself. But they're forcing you now into going back into your cage. Okay, meaning, okay, you got to get Netflix and you got to pay for the subscription. Oh, you got to pay for Paramount. You got to pay for Disney. You got to pay for that. And what are most people doing these days? They're eliminating these things. Okay, they're not watching these things anymore. They're canceling their subscriptions. They're watching more YouTube and more things on the internet. They're streaming. They're doing all kinds of things. And so, and as more and more people eventually go down their own rabbit hole, they're going to start figuring out and discovering themselves, hey, wait a minute, I would rather consume this stuff. I would rather find, you know, it might take a little bit extra work to find exactly what I'm looking for, but once I find it, we're good to go. All right, as opposed to, you know, watching things that are curated for you, all right, as to what the people in power, whatever, what they want you to watch, what they want you to consume, what they, you know, and so on and so forth. So this gives you a lot more freedom, not having a TV. Okay, it doesn't mean I don't consume the news. It doesn't mean I don't consume, you know, all kinds of content that a lot of people consume. But I get to pick and choose what I want instead of having CNN or Fox News on all the time and then just propaganda. I can simply just be like, you know, Charlie Kirk, whatever, or Trump getting shot in the ear, or whatever it is, and then, you know, depending on what it is I'm looking for will depend on what I'm going to watch. You know, because again, I might want to watch the actual official news story to see what they're saying. And then I'm going to watch this other guy that was at the thing filming it and he's uploading videos, you know, to his YouTube channel, you know, and I can go on and on. In fact, these days, real journalism is alive and well. Real journalism is on the internet. You know, there are people out there like Andrew Callahan with Channel 5 News. There's a bunch of other dudes out there. But long story short, there's a bunch of people out there actually doing real journalism, doing real news, real everything, real information, real the whole thing. What I was going to say about earlier back in the day, you know, when I was talking about cooking, is that also back in the day, if you wanted to learn how to build a desk, where the hell were you going to learn how to build a desk? You know, your best option was maybe going on PBS and maybe finding Bob Vila, This Old House, and maybe hoping to God, you know what I mean, that, you know, that episode he's learning how to build a desk or build a table or whatever, you know, and that's it. But nowadays it's not like that at all. It's like no matter what it is you want or need, no matter how niche it is, you can always find something online. That's it. It's as simple as that. So, you know, yeah, things have changed dramatically. That is 100% sure. And I mean, as the years go on, as time goes on, you know, again, why would I purchase a TV? I still plan on purchasing a TV because, you know, they're super crazy cheap. But already, especially these days, notice how TVs keep getting cheaper while everything else on the planet is getting more expensive. Coincidence? I think not. But anyways, but why would I want to purchase a TV in the future? Well, I already told you. Just to put in my living room so that in the future, maybe once or twice a month, me and the wife want to watch a movie, or once a weekend, and we could just pop it on there. I'll pop it on the computer, have the computer, what is it, simulcast it to the TV, and then watch it on the TV on the couch out there. Or again, get ourselves one of those cheap video game machines, that they have all over the place these days, and just hook that up to the TV and play video games, whatever, Or when I have family and friends over, I get to have a little something in the background. But again, one thing I've noticed as well as the years have gone on is that less homes have TVs as well. There are less TVs out there and more computers out there, and more people are consuming content on, the phone, on the computer, on their laptop, on their, what's the thing, the tablet. So anyways, all right. I see I've already gone an hour. Wow. Okay. That went by really quickly today. All right. So let's check out the poll. 16 votes on the poll. And the question was, do you own a TV? 75% said yes. Wow. Okay. So I do not own a TV. So I would be the 25% that does not own a TV. So what's 75% of 16? See how many people that is. Hold on. I got to do the math real quick. Let's see, 16 times, right? Point. I think, right? 12. So 12 out of 16 people own a TV. Wow. That's interesting. So, but again, I back in the day, it was 100%. And I feel like as each day goes on, less and less people own a TV. And again, I own monitors. I have 2 monitors here while I'm working, so, sometimes I'm working on one monitor, and then on the other monitor, I got a football game on, or I got a YouTube video on, or I got some music playing, or whatever it is while I'm working over here, and or vice versa, whatever. And that's the way I kind of roll, with the whole thing there. All right, let me see what you guys have to say real quick. DJ says, we watch what we are interested to watch. Plus, it's also way too much commercials on TV. Oh, yeah, I can't even imagine that. All the commercials on TV. I know a lot of you guys complain about, the ads on YouTube, but I mean, TV, it's even worse. And it's funny because I don't watch advertising anymore unless I'm watching a football game. And it's so crazy, man, because I'll watch, I'm watching a football game, and obviously the commercials come on. And when I see the commercials, and man, that is another kind of like mind fuck, because it's like, wow, man, these are some weird ass commercials, or every other commercial is a pharmaceutical commercial, but yeah, the commercials are so weird these days, and that's on regular TV. So I can't even imagine. But anyways, let me see. So yeah, so like all the Terry Wright says all the network sports are just network shows, all arguments all the time. No, I agree with you. I mean, that's why I don't even, like I said, back in the day, that's something I missed. When ESPN was still like a thing, I used to miss that. But nowadays, there's nothing to miss on ESPN, because every show on ESPN is just like Fox News or CNN, where it's just a bunch of people, arguing with each other. Just a bunch of people, arguing with each other, about whatever, about stupid things. And so it's like, I don't want to watch that. You know what I mean? I don't want to watch a bunch of sound bites of people arguing with each other. Unless it's actually, something interesting, because, sometimes on ESPN, on network TV, they're just arguing to argue, making insane, predictions, or talking about insane things just to, get that viral clip or the viral whatever. While when I'm watching, the sports stuff, on the internet, like, for example, talking about football, I can watch, John Gruden. John Gruden is freaking amazing. He's on the YouTubes. Okay. He used to have his own channel, and I think Barstool Sports now, sponsors him or whatever. But anyways, I get to see John Gruden, and he does episodes every week, but he does like breakdowns. So let's say, you know, the Dolphins and the Jets, and he'll do an hour and a half of just talking X's and O's. You know, just talking coaching stuff, just talking boring sports stuff for an hour. And this is John Gruden. That's amazing. I'm never going to find that on ESPN, you know, or, you know, Cam Newton. You know, Cam Newton, you know, again, he used to play football, and, you know, he had his, and he has his own podcast, his own show. And he's just doing what I'm doing right now. But it's Cam Newton. And they're talking about sports. Or look at Shannon Sharp, you know, with his, podcast show. Look at McGaffey. So the McGaffey guy, I didn't even know who he was. I just knew that he had like some show online, and then eventually he got picked up by ESPN. But I mean, I'm just telling you, look how things have dramatically, how they're changing, you know? And it's not going to end. We're only at the very beginnings of that. So, you know, to me, it's like, you know, when I talk about TV or when I think about TV, I'm really thinking about cable, you know, the TV programming, you know, all that stuff. Not necessarily the technology of the screen itself, because obviously I use screens and I watch things and you're watching me and all that stuff. It's just the kind of content that we're consuming these days has changed dramatically. And again, even like back in the day, let's say that you were going to watch like a show like Seinfeld or Lost or Grey's Anatomy or whatever it is, you know, you would have to wait every week to get that show and be lucky enough to be there and watch the show, and you had to watch it, you know, the whole thing. There was no DVR, none of that stuff. And now these days, you know, let's say like a brand new show, let's say Grey's Anatomy or something. I don't know why that's the only show on my head right now. But they'll drop a brand new season, and they just drop the whole season at one time on Netflix, and now people just binge watch like the whole season at once. Yeah, that's not something we did back in the day. So like, you know, consuming content has changed. The type of content has changed. The platforms have changed. The ability for us to make stuff has changed. You know, again, the barriers to entry were, you know, almost astronomical back in the day. These days, you know, the barrier to entry is basically, do you have a webcam and an internet connection? And that's it. So yeah, really, really, really awesome stuff. And so, yeah, to me, the way I look at it, it's like, you know, we're only at the very beginning, you know, of all this, and we have so much more to see, you know, as all this technology keeps evolving, and more of us, you know, have, you know, just grow tired of the status quo and grow tired of, you know, what is already out there, and we want our own thing, and we don't want to be told what to think anymore. You know, most people are now, you know, again, they have the ability to just seek out what they want. And a lot of times, like I said, just turning it off. You know, again, having the ability that, you know, right now, if you have cable TV, almost every channel that you're watching is something about the news or something negative or some, you know, whatever. It's all, you know, what's on TV, it's crap, right? But now, you know, these days, so for example, you know, like with the whole Charlie Kirk thing, it's like, listen, man, after like a day or two, I really just don't care anymore. I don't care. And so with, you know, having the ability to curate my own, you know, algorithm, curate, you know, what I want to watch, you know, I'm basically watching sports, watching cooking videos, watching other YouTubers, you know, watching entertainment, watching comedy, stand-up comedy, watching, you know, all these other things that have nothing to do with that. And all of a sudden, you know, it's like my mind is not being transformed, you know, by all this negative juju energy out there, you know, all this propaganda, all this other stuff that's out there, you know. Basically, you know, if I don't want to watch something because it's making me feel bad, you know, seeing somebody get shot 100 times in a row, I could just, you know, watch a cooking channel or watch a documentary on Smurfs or whatever it is, you know what I mean? And that's the thing, you know, we are now, again, breaking away from the old paradigm. You know, they're trying to keep us in that box, but I'm sorry, you know, that Pandora's box has been open for decades now, and there's no way they can put that back in the box. You know what I mean? That's it. You know what I mean? And so, you know, the only thing that they can do is just shut off the internet, shut off the electricity, shut off everything. But then if they do that, they also lose power. So that's why, again, the people in power, you know, they're losing the ability to keep manipulating, you know, and keep trying to brainwash the masses. Even though I know most of you guys will disagree with me and tell me, hey, Jose, I see more NPCs, more zombies these days than I have ever seen. And that's just, again, the true reality of it. Again, that just depends on the country. If you're in Canada or the USA, you're probably going to see a lot more zombies than if you're in another country where people have, have already, have developed the ability to think for themselves. But anyways, I really hope that today's video, today's live stream was entertaining, and I hope you guys enjoyed the show. And again, a lot of times I don't even know what I'm going to talk about. I literally, was putting the final touches on the live stream for today, last night, just trying to figure out, what to talk about. So it makes me very happy that, I get to just sit here, talk to you guys about whatever's on my mind, and then you guys enjoy it. Again, another plus, another, something that, another benefit of the world that we're moving into and living in right now. Where not only can I, make these things and make this kind of content, but there's a lot of people out there that are going to consume it, that want to, hear it. Because I listen to a lot of YouTubers or a lot of podcasts that are similar to this, So it is what it is. So again, that's why when I always laugh when a lot of people say out there, it's like, oh, you got to make your videos shorter. People don't have an attention span these days. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You know what I mean? People have more of an attention span these days than they ever have, all right? Because look at Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan does 3-hour podcasts. People listen to that. People watch, on a Sunday, they'll sit there from, 1 o'clock in the afternoon till 10 o'clock at night watching football. You know what I mean? I can go on and on. And there's so many things like that, all right? So that's the thing, don't believe the hype. Don't believe, what the idiots out there say, all right? Believe what you see with your own eyes and believe what you experience yourself, all right? Don't let anyone else tell you, what you're experiencing, okay? The hell do they know? Anyway, so, all right, guys. I think I'm going to wrap it up. It's already been long enough. I did a long video earlier today. Long video today. Getting tired, and I get again, my brain is turning to mush, as I'm here in front of the TV for too long. But anyways, guys, I really, really hope you guys enjoyed today's show. And if you did, you already know what to do. Don't forget to please like, please subscribe, please share, please hit the bell icon. But more importantly than anything else, please stay awesome. I hope to see you guys here next Thursday. You already know every single Thursday we're here live. Almost every Thursday. I try to be here every Thursday. I think I've only missed 1 or 2 in the last couple of years. But we're here every single Thursday. And again, I know I've been telling you guys for a while, but I'm going to be making more content soon that is not just the live streams. I'm working on a bunch of things behind the scenes. Hopefully we can get to, start uploading these things and start showing you what I've been working on and so on and so forth. All right. So, all right, guys, I really hope you guys enjoy, the show. I hope you guys enjoy, hanging out with me. I know I love hanging out with you guys. So you already know the deal. I'll see you guys here on the next show. And have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. I'll see you on the other channel. And that's it. Oh, yeah. One last thing I wanted to say. Guys, I opened up my t-shirt store. So if anyone out there wants to buy some merchandise, you guys want to help support the show, you guys want to help support everything I'm doing here on this channel, the other channel, whatever. I got my merchandise store back online. Remember, several months ago, I had to take it down because the company I was working for basically dropped the ball. And so I had to change companies and build everything from scratch. So I've been working on that since then. And so far I only got 3 t-shirts up, but we're going to have more merchandise and more stuff up for sale real soon. So again, I hope you guys, if you want a brand new t-shirt, you want to buy a gift for somebody, whatever it is, please check out the site and so on and so forth. And last but not least, again, if you enjoyed this show and you want to see more of them, please check out the other channels. All right, sorry, check out the other live streams, okay? I got tons of live streams, okay, that I've been doing, again, almost 2 years now on this channel. Kind of crazy how time flies. And then for some of you guys out there that want to listen to me, okay, because for whatever reason, you want to just listen to, me in the podcast form or whatever. You got Gizmo out there. Anyways, some of you guys want to just listen to me in a podcast form or whatever, I'm on Spotify as well. So all the links are down below. All the links are in the description. You can listen to me at your leisure as well. So, all right, guys, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Oh, shout out to Thad. Shout out. Thank you so much for hanging out. Hope to see you out here soon. Love you, brother. And love all of you guys as well. So you already know, again, as I was saying 2 seconds ago, don't forget to please like, please subscribe, please share, please the bell icon, but more importantly than anything else, please stay awesome. See you guys in the next one. And see you later, alligators.
Thanks for friends in the media, Sean and Laura and Tucker and Janine.
Oh, I wanna work in fake news, conspiracy TV, radio, WhatsApp, grits, and big crowd family, private server, emails. What about the Clinton Foundation? Isn't this far more worthy of an investigation? It's time to shut it down, turn the tables, and lock her up. You simply can't comprehend the genius of Donald Trump. The man is the president of the United States. He is to be respected. Kamala's a bitch, Hillary. Expect to be arrested. Fake news TV. Democrats want to replace you with immigrants. Their only hope, another Kevin is forming. The aliens are being coached. The media and the deep state is corrupt to the core. The America that we know and love doesn't exist anymore. The middle class has been displaced by an unending wave of illegals. Foreigners spit on our customs and mock our laws. And commerce racists if we try to make them believe. But Democrats have a solution. Smoke more weed. Stay routine. Listening to Tupac and smoking a ton of weed.
Smoke more weed.
There is a hero in Washington. His name, Jim Comey. Is not only brilliant, politics plays no role in his decisions.
He's a liar and he's a leftist liberal.
Fox Day on TV, peddling his head is free. Fake news, propaganda, and conspiracy theories. Criminal cabal in our FBI. The FBI is the crime family. Collusion is not a crime. It's actually immoral not to vote for Donald Trump. We think gonna have people that we know nothing living next door to us. Fox News been trying to scare you. Demonization begins. Immigrants been dead. It's us against them. Fake news TV. How precisely is diversity our strength? Fake news TV. Fake news all over the place. This is an invasion into this country.
There is no invasion. Tomorrow is 1 week before the midterm election.
I told you that you needn't be afraid because they are coming for you.
No one's coming to get you.
Putin got 20% of our uranium as a result of Hillary Clinton signing off.
She did not.
Our red is in fact sex crazed killing machines. Fake news TV. Fake news TV. Fake news TV.
Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another live stream. Back to another live stream. Back
100 times?
to another live stream. Back,
200 times?
back,
500 times?
Who is Jose Arteaga?
Jose Arteaga is a YouTube content creator with several channels focusing on different themes.
I can't do it. We'll do it live. We'll do it live. Thing sucks.
His main channels include travel vlogs and lifestyle content. On his travel channel, Jose Arteaga Travels.
You ain't got the answers, man. You ain't got the answers.
Additionally, he runs a cooking channel and engages in other personal projects that highlight his diverse interests and expertise. Projects and expertise. Projects and expertise. Projects, project, 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 projects, project,